All right, so talking about our assignment, how we create our walls. Okay, so instead of, creating these walls like this and leaving a little gap for the floor slab and then having our lower level walls, what would be better is if I were to delete all of these out of here, click delete, click, I'm hitting delete on the keyboard, click delete, okay, and have all of these exterior walls continue up to the next level, right? So if I'm looking at this in 3D, and I'm going to pop over to like an east view, and I'm going to tile my windows, WT, so I can see them both at the same time, right? I'm going to hover over a wall, tab, click, okay? And instead of my walls going from the main level up to the top of wall, which top of wall ends at 9 feet here, right? I want them to go all the way up to, let's take them up to the roof, okay? So I would change from here to roof, okay? And that would extend my walls up to where they need to be. Now in actuality, we're going to change our roof. We'll call this top of wall, okay? And we're going to add in, you all had an assignment to add some more levels, right? So you add a new level, and we'll call this new level roof essentially, okay? So this will be called roof, and that will be at 25 foot, right? So this is essentially what you want your walls to look like. You want them to be continuous, okay? You might run into instances where maybe you have some special condition on your wall, right? Maybe you have a brick wainscot, or you have a brick reveal, or you have something else happening, right? We may get into how to add those custom items to walls. At the end of the semester, we might not. But essentially, when you have something like a wainscot or a reveal, you handle that within your wall type, okay? So there's ways to split walls within your wall type and add reveals and do different things like that, okay? But essentially, again, the idea is that you want continuous walls that start at whatever level they start at and go upwards, to wherever they terminate, okay? Yep.
What about where the second level is over the porch?
So that's, yeah, we have a little bit different condition there where you will have some walls like, I don't have the second level in here, but there is a little piece, like there's a porch here, right? So this piece comes out and over. That will start at the second level and go up. So that is an exception to the rule. And also foundation walls are an exception, right? Which we'll get to eventually. Not just yet, but in a couple of weeks. So where we have this kind of cantilevering out above, yes, you'll start at level 2 and go up to whatever height, right? And then foundation walls, those are not going to be part of this wall either, right? So I don't extend this wall assembly down into the ground. I will create a foundation wall that starts here and moves down and is its own separate wall, okay? So that is one thing that I saw. So if you have that in your model, just fix it. I saw a lot of walls that were just kind of extended into infinity. So they were unconnected, and the unconnected height by default in Revit is 20 feet, right? So I saw a lot of this happening, right? So that made me think, well, and this is one thing you will all get used to doing in Revit. You draw something, don't just draw it and don't, look at it again. When you draw your items in Revit, draw them and then flip into a 3D view and look at them, right? So that you make sure that you have them built correctly, okay? So I saw a lot of this happening, and that, again, that's just it very easily occurs, but you can just grab it and you can look at the base constraint and the top constraint, and we'll just change that to level 2, bring it down. Oop, and these actually just go to top of wall. So that one needs to go down even more to top of wall, right? So there was that. Let's see, there was, one other thing I saw. For your wall types, okay, what I would like you to do, if you haven't done this already, and some of you did and some of you didn't, again, this is kind of your very first try in Revit, so I didn't dock a whole lot of points, right? Because I know that you guys are all, I think actually you all are doing really well. You seem to be understanding, and I had a lot of really good models. But one other thing you'll want to do with your wall types, just for our purposes, if you've created a wall type, which you all have, okay, I want you to name them W1, W2, W3, W4, and then add description after them, okay? So if you just called it exterior stone on 6-inch wood stud, I want you to just go back in your model and hit rename. And maybe this one is called something like, you know, the wall type 1, okay? So just rename them. If you just name them very simply with the descriptor, give them a designation like W1, W2, W3, W4, okay? And that will, you know, be illustrated in the assignment. I think I named them wall type 1, 2, 3, and 4, okay? So, so we've got the wall type revision. I hit OK, I hit OK, and now you notice that W1 is illustrated there, okay? Final thing that I saw that was not super consistent, and again, I think this is just getting to know the program, right? For now, I want all of these items to be on an existing level. If that's any indication that we will be adding a remodel, right? Adding some new construction here. But I think everybody generally had existing items in their model. But I think that as you worked through the second level and, you know, different things like that, you forgot about it. So some things were new construction, some things were existing, right? Just go back in and make sure that everything is existing, okay? Now, let me show you what will happen if some things are existing and some things aren't, okay? I have these walls and you see they're new construction. Let's put them on existing. You notice how my windows turn red, right? Maybe some of you have noticed that. Or when I go to my main level, that I don't have any windows necessarily showing, right? Let me actually, I'm going to select all this stuff. And I'm going to put it on the existing phase. Okay, that looks good. So basically what is happening here is that my windows aren't showing because if I select them, okay, they are showing new construction, all right? So I don't see them within my existing floor plan here. And the reason I don't see them is because the phase that I'm in here, do you see it says new construction? If I go to existing, oops, nope, that's not what I wanted. Hold on, why are they not showing dashed is what I was more anticipating. Hold on a second. There we go. Hold on one second. These are showing demoed actually, so let me make sure. Phase demoed, none. We'll put these on existing. All right, so they are essentially not showing up. Oh, I know why they're not showing up. Hold on. I think I changed my view range. Yep. Okay. That's more what I was hoping for. And okay. There we go. So that's new construction, new construction. Okay, there we go. The problem I was having with mine were that my cut plane for my view range was set at 1 foot. So when it was cutting my floor plan, I wasn't seeing anything that was above 1 foot. So I wasn't seeing my windows, right? But with your windows, when you're having some phasing issues going on, right? You can get, let me see if I can make this error work. No, okay. You can get errors where you have maybe new construction and existing elements or existing elements and new construction. Number one, sometimes things don't show up, right? Meaning if I have these windows and maybe they're not showing up, but I can see them in elevation, you're likely having a phasing issue, right? So if the wall is existing and this is a new window, sometimes it will show dashed, sometimes it will show bright and dark like new construction, sometimes it will show faded out like existing, right? But you'll get a lot of weird graphical things going on when you have things on the wrong phases, right? So if you're getting dashes here, it's because you have an existing wall, and with a new window, you have to cut out a piece of the wall to add the window, right? Or if it's not showing up, it could be that you have it on the wrong phase. If, you know, it shows red, we've got demo going on, right? So some of these graphical errors that you see, those are going to be phasing issues, okay? So just make sure that you have everything on the right phase, okay? This phase right here, it says new construction. If I change that to existing, right? The existing shows more bright, and I don't see any of the new stuff. These are kind of phase filters essentially. So if I just want to see the existing elements, I change to existing. If I want to see the new elements, that shows me the previous phase plus the new construction, okay? And I can alter that as well. I'm not going to go into this a whole bunch, but like phase filter here, this shows me the previous phase, which is existing, and the new stuff. I could show complete. Yep.
Right now, do you want our walls and our windows to be
Everything existing.
existing?
Yep, let's just put everything on existing for now. Yep. So, you know, again, graphical weirdness, things that looking dashed when they shouldn't, likely a phasing issue. Okay, so I'm going to do previous plus new is kind of my favorite phase filter for that. Okay. But those were kind of the main things that I saw. Make your walls continuous, make sure they're all in the existing phase for now. But I think those were, in general, kind of the main things that I saw. I'm going to grab these and I'm going to put them on. Make sure they're on the existing phase.
So are you just holding down tab?
I'm holding down control. Yep, if I want to select things that are touching, right, I hover and I tab and I click, escape. If I want to pick multiple items, click, and I hold down control, click, click, and it will pick multiple items, right, and then I can change these to existing. Okay. All right. Phasing doesn't seem like a big deal, but it is in architecture, especially if you're, you know, working, I mean, if you're working a lot of work, I'm going to say this, a lot of work, a ton of work is within existing infrastructure, right? So you're taking a building that is already existing, you're removing, you know, existing elements and you're building new elements within that same space. And so it's important to be able to differentiate those items, okay? All right, any other questions about anything else?
I have a question.
Yep.
So, right, like, I feel like in the next, like, maybe 10 years, a lot of the construction is going to need, like, resurfacing. So similar to, like, what Delano Roosevelt did, like, his thing, where he'd just contract out a bunch of people. Would architects be affected by that, like, rebuilding the infrastructure of existing things, kind of like redoing roads, you know, buildings are going to have to be kept up just because our country's kind of aging and now it's about time that they need like a facelift.
Right.
So do you think that architects, or how would that affect architecture and like the job field?
I think that, I mean, it's definitely going to affect architecture. Yeah, for sure, because somebody's going to have to go in there and evaluate existing conditions, right, and retrofit if needs be, and then draw new updated plans to build out, essentially. Yeah.
All right, and then do you think that is like an accurate prediction that that's going to happen here pretty soon?
Oh, I think it's already starting to happen.
It's already starting now?
Yeah. Oh,
okay.
yeah, for sure. You look at downtown, and that's kind of, I mean, it's a ton of work is going into tenant improvement. Oh yeah, for sure. There's a lot of, you know, we're kind of in a weird spot in Utah, especially because we have a lot of new buildings going on, a lot of new developments, like housing developments and kind of urban sprawlish things happening, right? So we do have a lot of of that going on, but we're revitalizing downtown as well, and people.
Yeah, there's some old buildings there too.
Yeah, and people are using the existing infrastructure and just building out. Method Studio has a huge tenant improvement area, the interiors department, and they are going crazy. I mean, I would bet that it's like the work is 50-50.
That's our bread and butter.
Yeah. It's insane.
All we do.
Yeah. A lot of the new projects that are going on for Method, at least, you know, it's like, it's not even necessarily a lot of new kind of businesses, right? We've done when I was at Method, we did a ton of institution, like schools and stuff, and
Yeah, I saw like
public buildings, right? But it sounds like
Well, we just did
You
the
do-
arena.
yeah, the arena.
$800,000 contract.
right.
We just landed 17 floors downtown. That's $1 million contract for
Mhm.
just sprinklers alone.
Mhm.
Sprinklers. That's all you guys do is sprinklers?
Just fire sprinklers.
Yeah, there's a ton of, the methods interiors department is going crazy right now. Yeah, I think maybe the past, and I've heard this a little consistently through the industry, that the past 3-4 months there's been a little bit of a dip in kind of the public work, right? 3 to 4 months is nothing, right? You kind of just get caught up in what you're behind on, essentially, right? But that's really like a methods interiors department just went crazy. I mean, it has continued to go crazy, but kind of supported that dip while you know, new work came out.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. So this is something that you'll be doing a lot of, right? You'll go out, you'll measure and confirm existing conditions, you will draw existing conditions in Revit, right? And then you will design the new space that's going to be going in, essentially. Yeah. And you'll take the model, right? You're doing fire sprinkling. You'll take the existing model that the architect generates, right? And you will use it to design your sprinkler system.
Well, you'll be designing
Right.
the 17 floors. He doesn't know that yet, but.
Right, but I mean, like, yeah, you know what I'm saying though, right? Like you'll take this model that hopefully is effectively phased, right? And you'll be able to take it and insert all of your equipment and use it for your purposes, right? Just like, yeah, and electrical, well, most of the time, hopefully, right? If it all works together.
Models on it though.
That-
He said the drawings on it.
Right. Well, I think normally what happens is there's rarely a CAD file out there, right? So it's all generated new most of the time. But that's what the electrical engineer, that's what the structural engineer, right? It's generated, it's confirmed, and then it's sent out to consultants. Yeah. Any other questions?
So can I hijack
Oh, yes. Yep. Just for a second. Okay. All right, well, let's talk about floors then today. We are going to work on some floors. All right, so with floors, you're going to be introduced in Revit to something that you haven't seen before, okay? You might have accidentally gotten into it without knowing it, but you're going to be working with what's called sketch mode in Revit today, all right? If you look at your model here, right, and you have all the correct levels, mine aren't exactly correct right now. In fact, let's change this one. 10, 19. I meant to mention this, make sure, yep, okay. Okay, looks more correct than it was. But essentially, if you look here, right, we have our ceiling heights, okay? And this is what I think is one of Revit's biggest strengths, especially for beginning designers, right, is the ability for you to actually be able to look at a 3D model and understand what is happening with the construction of it, right? When you get out of school, you don't know a whole lot about this type of thing. And so I think this is a strong point for beginning designers with Revit, is to help you learn how things go together, right? But essentially I've got my main level to ceiling height, my first level ceiling heights established, okay? And I left a little gap here, right? And then I have my second level ceiling height established, 9 feet, okay? And I think I explained this a little bit, but if you weren't here, you'd probably be thinking, well, what is that 1 foot that I have left there, right? Why do I have to have that little gap there? And essentially, it's for your floor slab, right? So we have to start thinking about buildings not just as, you know, we have an 8-foot ceiling, but we have an 8-foot ceiling. We have, you know, and this is kind of more of a residence. You know, in some place like this, you could have 2, 3, 4 feet of space above the ceiling, right? But we have to start thinking about buildings, how they actually go together, right? We have an exterior wall. Somewhere in between here we have a floor slab, right? And then these exterior walls somewhat sit, right, on floor slabs. And then we have foundations that kind of support that underneath there, right? And then we have some type of, you know, maybe a truss or a roofing system that comes, you know, above that, or maybe it's a parapet or whatever it is. But essentially you have to start thinking about, you know, if I want 9-foot ceilings and I only account for 9 foot and I don't remember that I have a floor slab coming in, right? And it's all designed and perfect and permitted and you're ready to go, and then all of a sudden you think, oh gosh, I have 18 inches or a foot here, right, that I need to account for. Then, you know, you're kind of eating into ceiling height here, you're eating into ceiling height here. So, you know, you're gonna wanna start noting those things, okay? And that's what we've done here essentially, by establishing kind of a top of wall and then a second level, right? We don't just say second level. All right, so that foot, that space there is where our floor is going to lie, right? The floor for the upper level, the ceiling for the lower level here, the bottom level. Okay, so how do we create floors? And sorry, let me go back to my elevation here, okay? We're gonna have a floor that is down here, right? So you have to think about where the floor on the main level lies, because you might have the same condition. You might have a slab, you might have all sorts of things happening. And then you're gonna have a floor here as well, okay? We're not gonna worry about the ceiling just yet, we're getting there, okay? When we have an actual ceiling, we're getting there, but we're just gonna talk about floors today. Okay, I'm gonna go to my main level, and I would like to draw that. I'm gonna WT here, window tile. I want to draw this floor right here, kind of that floor slab. Okay, and we're gonna enter sketch mode. Sketch mode allows us, it kind of bumps us into an editor of types within Revit, and it allows us to sort of draw custom shaped elements in Revit, okay? Custom shaped elements like floors or ceilings or roofs, different things like that, okay? You'll run into sketch mode actually quite a bit in Revit, okay? Our floor icon is located here. It's on the architecture tab, all right? If I drop down, I have an architectural floor and I have structural by face and slab edge. I want to do an architectural floor here, okay? I'm going to click on floor, and you'll notice that when I do that, my screen grays out, right? And I get my drawing tools pop up here, and I get an X and I get a check mark, right? So if you've accidentally brought yourself in here, if I needed to get out, I could hit the X and I would be out of it, okay? But I do want to be in that when I'm drawing things like the floor slab. So I'm going to click on floor, architectural. And what I want to do is I want to start drawing the outline of my floor, all right? Now there's several different components associated with drawing our floor, right? Number one, what level is that floor going to sit on? Number two, where's the outline sit? And number three, what type of floor are we going to be using, okay? Number one, I want my floor not to sit at main level, I want it to sit at top of wall, okay? And I'm going to WT, see how in the command I can WT and I can look and see, yeah, okay, top of wall. There we go, that's where we want it, great. Okay. The second thing I'm going to look at is what type of floor do I want? Well, floor types are just like wall types, okay? So I have floor types, I have wall types, I have ceiling types, I have roof types. I've got a whole host of different types of things in Revit, okay? So I've got a generic 12-inch floor, which, you know, we kind of left a foot in there, which seems to work out pretty well. If I wanted to, I could just proceed kind of with this generic floor that doesn't have any structural association with it to get it drawn, and then I could go back and revise it if I needed to, right? I could also, while I'm in my sketch here, I could create a new floor type, and I create a new floor type just like I create a new wall type. I hit edit type. I look at my drop down and see if there is one here that is most similar to the one I want to create. Maybe we could say like a 12-inch joist with carpet. I'm going to hit duplicate. We will call this, I'm going to call this FT1, floor type 1. And we will call this wood joist, maybe 11 7/8, right? And we'll do with VCT. Okay, I'm going to hit edit on my structure. Seem familiar, right? This functions exactly like a wall. So I've got my structure, which is my wood joist. I have plywood sheathing. I have carpet, which we're going to change to maybe a VCT, like a tile. And we'll do that one. Oh no, that's not what we want. VCT, there we go, vinyl composition tile. Hit OK. And we'll leave it an 1/8 inch thickness. This actually, when you look at it, you know, we left a foot, right, for our floor slab, and it's actually going to be a little bit more than that, okay? So we'll have to adjust that after the fact. But I've got my structure, I've got my sheathing, part of my structure, and then I have my VCT. I'm going to hit OK. OK. And now I'm going to draw my floor. Okay. Now, one thing about drawing your floor, and this again is kind of the hardest part for new design students, right, is kind of figuring out how these things go together. But there is going to be kind of the right spot and wrong spot as to how far the floor slab extends into your wall, right? When you think about drawing your floor, your initial thought is probably like, oh, I'm just going to kind of draw around the edge of the inside of the wall, right? But if you actually think about how this floor is defined, right? We have plywood, we have a joist, and we have VCT on top. So essentially what we have set this floor up to do is to extend into the wall all the way to the boundary of where the floor slab would sit, right? To the plywood, essentially, okay? So just some things to think about. You may not know what that means just yet, but let me just draw something in and I'll show you what that means, okay? All right. Our drawing tools are exactly the same as our wall generation tools. We have a line where I can come in and I can trace, right? I'm going to hit escape. I have a pick, okay, so I can pick. These two lines, we're not going to worry about these other two pink lines. These have to do with slope, which we're not going to worry about just yet, okay? I have the pick line, which picks a specific line. But then I also have a pick that is for walls. So if I click on this wall pick, do you see how it picks the wall and I get a blue line, that dashed line, okay? That dashed line is indicating right here where it says extend into the wall to the core, right? Which means to the structure of the wall. If I pick this, click, it will pick the core, the edge of core, which is the studs. Okay, so it's going to be pretty close to where I want this floor to lay in my wall. All right. So I'm going to click, and I'm just going to go around the edge of my structure. Click, click, click. Zoom in. Click, click. If I accidentally had, I had drawn something and it wasn't exactly where I wanted it to be, right? Like I grabbed that and oops, it was out too far. Okay.
Do you want to do this on level 1 or we want to do this on level 2?
Well, right. So we've defined it. It doesn't really matter if you're on level 1 or level 2 with this one because we've defined it as top of wall where it's going to rest. Okay.
So I can draw on level 2 then?
Uh-huh. Yep. Okay. So if I have accidentally, but here's the thing, right? So let me talk through that. So I am drawing this so that it fits within the boundary of level 1, right? So I'm just using level 1 because I can see the walls. In our case, level 2 is slightly different than level 1, right? So maybe it makes actually more sense to draw it on level 2 because we have that cantilever that pops out, right? Okay, we'll go back and we'll alter that a little bit. But it doesn't matter in terms of like it's going to be associated with level 1 if I draw it on level 1 like walls, right? Because I have set it so that it's going to be associated with top of wall. Okay. So what happens if I get off course here, right? I can grab this and I can hit delete. I can align it to an item, right? I can use all my modification tools. But that doesn't necessarily align it to the core, right? That's the midline of the wall. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete that. I'm going to grab my pick walls again, click, and redo it. Okay, so you can alter these. You can make them, oh, I think when I moved that, it moved everything, didn't it? They were all locked together. That is one joy of Revit, right? Everything connects, whether you like it or not. I'm going to delete this guy, and we'll create one more. There we go. Okay, so this is sketch mode. Essentially, I'm bumped into an editor. Everything in my screen grays out, right? And I am allowed to draw a boundary around the object that I want to generate, right? In this case, it's a floor slab, all right? Now, if I hit finish here, okay, I've drawn my boundary. I've associated it with whatever level it needs to be associated with. I've assigned a floor type, okay? If I hit finish, it says, would you like the walls that go up to this floor's level to attach to its bottom? For now, we're going to hit no. We'll talk about that in a second. And I hit finish, and I don't see a whole lot, right?
Mine says floor roof overlaps.
yeah, just hit no for now. Let's look at it. I got that same error, but I need to look at it to see what's going on. So immediately I think, okay, now I need to look and see what's going on. I go into 3D and there is my floor. I don't really, floor and roof overlap. I don't know why we got that error, because we don't have a roof. We don't have any object pretending to be a roof. I don't know. It may be interacting with the walls funny. Anyway, so I have my floor in here. Okay, you can't really see it very well from your elevations, right? If I type WF wireframe, which is a visual style, I can see it there, right? Wireframe allows me to view items through, each other. There it is. I can see it. It interacts with my wall pretty appropriately, right? Looks pretty good. Okay, HL, hidden line. Now I can't see it. If I want to see kind of a section cut through it, meaning I want to be able to look at my floor plan and see a cut right through that, let me show you how to create a quick section. I'm going to go to main level. If you come up here to our quick access, there is a section tool. Click, click, click. I just drew a section through this, all right? This is the annotation marker for a section. If I click on it, it gives a little blue dash line. That shows to what extent this section is cutting through the building, okay? This little marker right here points in the direction that the section is looking. So essentially, this is cutting through this building vertically. It's looking that direction, and I'm seeing everything from this cut line past the building that is illustrated by this blue line. I could drag this back and forth to change that depth of field. To access this, I can double click on the head here of the section, or I could come over here to my project browser, and you're going to notice we have a section area that's been generated. I click to open that, click, click, and there's my section. I'm going to tile my windows here, WT, and you can see, right, here's my section. It's cutting through the wall right there. It's cutting through the floor, all the way back to the wall over here, cutting through right there. And I'm viewing the elements on this wall back here, essentially. Okay, those windows are on the main level. Okay, so I can see my floor, right? Looks pretty good. Okay. One thing I had mentioned is that when I created this floor, right, we'd only left 12 inches between our, floor-to-floor heights. And so this floor slab ended up being a little bit thicker than a foot, right? So I'm going to do my quick dimension here. Annotate. We don't know a lot about dimensions yet, but I've shown you how to pull a quick dimension, clicking on aligned. Click, click. I've got 7 foot 11 1/4 right there, right? So just under 8 feet. Okay, and if I measure here, we've got 10 feet, right? So maybe instead of this being associated with top of wall, maybe we want it associated with level 2. If I click on my floor, I can change this from top of wall to level 2. Okay, that kind of evens it out a little bit more, right? We do another dimension here. Okay, but even still, I have 8 foot 11 1/4, right? Maybe that's okay. Maybe that's close enough to 9 feet that your client doesn't really care, right? But maybe they say, no, I want 9 feet, right? Clear, floor to ceiling. So we're going to have to adjust our levels a little bit to make that work, right? I can click on my floor slab. I can change this to 9 foot, right? So it moves it up a tiny bit. It moved it so that it is, the bottom of that floor slab is sitting with top of wall, but it encroaches just the tiniest bit into level 2. I'm going to delete this dimension. I'm going to click on align dimension. I'm going to dimension from the top of the floor slab up to that level. Now we only have 8 foot 11 1/4 there, right? Well, we don't want that. I'm going to click on my level, 9 feet. So very easily, your levels can kind of change and they end up being a little bit of a weird increment, right? We may end up rounding that to, 19 foot 1 inch or whatever. but how your structure is defined and what your structure ends up being is pretty pertinent to your building design, right? Very, very, very frequently I'll design something and I'll say, oh, I'm going to plan on 11/7/8 joists, and I go to the structural engineer and they say, you need 14-inch joists here, right? And you're like, well, great, you know, okay. So then you have to go back to your Revit model and you have to update everything, right? So that everything is where it needs to be, and it's kind of a pain in the neck. So if I were to say, give advice on this, you know, overestimate instead of underestimate, but just keep it in mind, right? I also have a roof that needs to go in here, right? So I have to take that into account. You know, so you'll work through your design, you'll start adding structure, you'll be adding ceilings and floor slabs and foundations, and for a while, right, you can probably start seeing how much time it takes to coordinate all of this stuff and to get it right. Okay. All right, any questions on floor slabs so far? Yep.
So how much is overestimating on a floor slab? Like how much is like this is enough room, I'll be okay.
I would say like in a residential application like this, 14 inches would be
14 inches.
like pretty adequate, right? Because your engineer could say you could use 14-inch joists, right? And then you maybe have 2 or 3 inches within that, right? I would say 11 7/8 is generally pretty adequate. Like 14 inches is probably, or so 12 for a joist and then 2 more inches for, you know, finishes. But yeah, anywhere in that 12 to 14, 16-inch range is pretty good.
And then what is like a good, like your ceiling height? What is a good ceiling height that looks like uncomfortable or whatever?
It just depends on the client, really, right? Some clients, like we're in this 2510 class we have, the contractor said we only want 8-foot ceilings in the basement, period, right? So it's 8 foot. Well, it's average, right? That's pretty average. And on the main level, we want 9 foot. You're like, okay, 9 foot's pretty good, right? But maybe some people like 10. So I think 9's pretty standard. Yeah. Yep.
So you put VCT tile on this.
Right.
So technically the wall is being built on top of that.
Right. Yep.
So
Right. Right. So you're going to find a lot of this happening, right, within Revit, where how do we split things up, right? Do I just show the structure, okay, and then do I add a second floor that's kind of a faux floor so that my finishes don't go into the wall, right? Or there's another kind of more complicated way of doing it, where do I leave the finish off totally, I don't create a second floor, and I schedule a pattern on my floor plan so that I just see a pattern, not a thickness, right? It's a good comment, right? Oh, we're building VCT into the wall. No, that's not really how it works, right? Or do I just leave it this way and then do I detail over the top of it, right? There's probably 4 or 5 different ways to handle it in Revit, and the right answer is however your office wants to deal with it is how you're going to end up doing it, essentially, yeah. Okay, so we have our floors. What if we want to change our floor, right? If I want to create a new floor type, or if I want to alter this one, I click on it, I hit edit type, right? Maybe I got a note that said you have to have 14-inch joists. Okay, so I hit edit type, and I come down to my structure and I type in, instead of 11 7/8, I type in 14 inches. The plywood's 3/4, and let's do a wood floor, right? So let's see, we'll do cherry, oak. Who likes oak? Okay. I click on oak flooring. I get a 3-inch parallel pattern here. I hit OK. But, you know, we don't want an 1/8 inch thickness. Wood flooring's thicker than that. So maybe we'll leave, I don't know, an inch, maybe 1.5 inches, right? For a wood floor. It's worth it. Architecture needs identity, right? It's hitting home. We just had the discussion at my house, right? Fake flooring, fake plastic flooring. No way. We went maple all the way.
Not bamboo?
It'll last another 100 years, right? Okay. So we have our flooring. Okay, we hit OK, we hit OK, and then you see our floor grew, right? And it grew down. So again, our floor, floor to ceiling height is 8 foot 9 inches, and if your client is not really happy with that, you're going to have to adjust it, right? So you maybe get the idea where, number one, this is a good tool for beginning designers because you can actually see the implications of changes that you make, right? So, it's very easy to be like, oh yeah, just add wood flooring. Well, that takes from the ceiling height. Oh yeah, I forgot about that. Let's, raise the height of the building, whatever. But you can also see maybe where there's a lot more coordination in the beginning of the project, right? Where AutoCAD, you kind of find these things out like later on, right? You deal with them. In Revit, they're immediately presented, which I think is nice. All right, so we've changed our floor, right? Looks good. I can see all the different striations, right? Here's my joist. Here is my plywood. There is my wood floor, right? We're gonna have a lot of, again, this is kind of office standard, but you're going to have to determine where your datums lie, right? Do they lie on the top of the joist? Does your datum lie at the top of the plywood, right? And we don't want it to lie on the finish, but where exactly does your office want that datum for your level to lie? Okay. All right, let's talk about altering the sketch and creating openings in the floor for stairs or an elevator or whatever, right? Okay, so I can see this in my sectional view, right? I'm going to go back to my main level floor plan here. Okay. And I want to create an opening in that floor. Okay. I don't see it on my main level. I'm going to type SD for shade. And if there were a floor here, you'd see it. It'd be shaded. But I don't see a floor here, right? Obviously, we created it on our second level. So I'm going to go up to, what is my second level called? Let's look. I don't even remember. It is level 2. Go figure. Oh, is that only oh, it doesn't have a level associated with it, of course. I'll go to top of wall then. See all these weird things I do when okay, so I go to top of wall and I can see my floor there, right? I can see that it has a pattern, it looks like wood, right? To select a floor is kind of a tricky thing. You at times can maybe just hover in the kind of middle of the field. You see how the boundary selects and click, okay? That will generally happen if you have a pattern on your floor, okay? If you don't have a pattern on your floor, it's a lot harder to select. Let me, in fact, take the pattern off this floor and show you what happens. Let's see. All right, so I hover in here. Do you see now I don't really have anything to pick, so it's a little bit harder. So I can go, I guess my best advice for selecting floors is to go near a boundary. So where the floor meets the wall and tab. And if you look down at look down here as I'm tabbing, okay? I'm up here, tab, it says chain of walls, tab, basic wall, tab, chain of walls. Okay, so I need to move in a little further, tab. Okay, it's not letting me get my floor. I know it's there, right? Tab. I'm trying to tab and pick it. Oh, finally, after I move kind of out, do you see how down at the bottom there it says floors? So if I click, I've selected my floor. Oop, that's not what I wanted, sorry. So I tab. Tabbing cycles you through a selection and will allow you to pick the wall, pick the floor, pick the interior wall. But I was having a hard time getting it, right? So I just move my mouse until tab, and I hit tab until I found it. Okay, click. I've selected my floor. Okay, so floors are best selected at the edge. Unless there's a hatch pattern, then you can select it, in the center. If I absolutely wouldn't have been able to pick my floor from this view, I would have gone into 3D, and I would have again hovered near a boundary, and floors are probably more easily picked in a 3D view. So I hover around a boundary, you see that, and down at the bottom left it says floors, so I click. Okay, great. I need to alter the floor because, I forgot that, this, for me, I didn't draw it in there, right? But our wall, or our floor plan, our footprint actually extends out in that entryway, right? There's a little porch or something there. Okay, so I'm gonna go back to my level 2, top of wall. And with my floor selected, I'm going to hit edit boundary up here. Now this edit boundary will not appear unless you've selected the floor. So I click edit boundary and it bounces me back into sketch mode, right? So in this case, I'm going to click delete, click delete. I'm going to trim TR, click, click, and I edited my sketch. Okay. So now when I hit finish, which is the check mark, let's hit no for now, right? And I go into 3D. I can see on the upper level that I have that floor extend out there. Okay. Now this floor assembly is likely going to be different than this one, of course, right? We're just showing this in class, but you know, you potentially could have a second floor type out here for your, you know, if it's a balcony or something and it's not interior, it'd be different, right? But I'm going to alter my wall so that this actually looks the way it should. Let's see. Let's take this. Okay, let's take that down to level 2. Looks good. Oop. Nope, not the one I wanted. I think I've named 2 of these top of wall. And it's confusing me on which one is which now. There we go. Okay. And I'm going to go to my main level, or sorry, second level, top of wall here. I'm going to create some more of this. I click on it. Remember, create similar. Don't forget create similar. It's basically the only way that I draw things. And after I have the initial stuff drawn, you know, a few examples, I very rarely go and search through all the menus to find wall types and components and floors and, right? It's just, that's the one thing I hate about Revit. I feel like you are constantly searching through a menu, right? AutoCAD has its weirdness, but at least in AutoCAD, I'm not constantly searching for something, right? I can draw very quickly. Okay, I click create similar, and this one I want to go from my base constraint will be top of wall up to maybe we'll do roof and then look at it. I'm going to extend it past, oop, that's not what I wanted to do. It is terrible, isn't it? It's hurting my eyes, it's so awful. There we go. Click, create similar. If it's on the wrong side of the wall, remember I can tap or space bar. Right? They extend out. Trim, TR, click, click. Align, A, L. You notice in 3D, I work in 3D a lot too now, right? I never did this in AutoCAD, you know, but in Revit, I work in it a ton, right? I can align, AL. I can grab that face, click. I can grab this face, click. Oh, and they don't align. Come on. Maybe I need to bring it down. AL. Click, click. AL. Click. Oops. Oh, I'm grabbing the center line of that wall, not the top. AL. There we go. Click, click. Right. AL. Oh, for some reason they don't want to join. Let's go back to floor plan view, right? It might be that my floor is interacting weird, or maybe this wall down here is, see how it's overlapping a tiny bit there? Maybe that's interfering with the join, right? One thing I've been helping a lot of people with is the upper level, all those diagonal walls coming in, right, together. There's some weirdness in them joining together, right? This could have some other geometry interfering with it wanting to connect over here, right? So I had to go to floor plan and connect it. Revit is all about how things come together. So for example, upstairs, when you have, let me change my wall type. When you have those walls that are diagonal, and I don't remember where they are quite, but you know, you have something going like this and coming down and going like that, right? And then maybe you have another wall that is, you know, coming from here, okay? These walls, how they all come together, there's, I guess, a certain priority, right? So if you bring this wall out first, and then you bring this one down, and then this one over, it might not join as cleanly. This one actually looks okay, of course. But it may not look as clean as if you had maybe joined these two together first and got a nice clean join, and then brought this third element in, right? So, if you're getting some weirdness, like maybe something's poking out on this side, or there's a little gap in between all three of these walls, my best advice is to kind of take them apart almost, right? Draw them back, and then bring a few of them together in a different sequence, right? To see how they all go together.
I'm having the hardest time trying to do the tab and connect more than one element at one time.
So, if you're having trouble like in floor plan, right? I hover, I tab, it grabs them, or maybe it doesn't, right? Go into a 3D mode and highlight, tab, click. Try that out. Did that work better in 3D?
Well, I just want to do two so I can.
Oh, you just want to do two?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so tab is kind of an all or nothing, so whatever it's touching, it connects. If you want to just do two elements, you're going to click, you're going to hold down Control, and you're going to click again, and it will add that in. Yeah. Okay, so I have, I've got this house and I have a floor in here now, and I've fixed my walls so they kind of work. Everything is looking pretty good, right? Well, everything's looking pretty good except I don't really have an opening in there for my stairs to pop through, right? Which we have to think about, okay? So I'm gonna go to look at my side views here. I keep forgetting which level's which. I'm gonna go to top of wall, click. I'm going to try and select my floor, which was kind of a pain in the neck, a tab, 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 until I, grab the boundary of that floor. I'm not going to, again, it's a little bit hard to just grab a floor in the center, right, as much as I want to. Oop, at that nonsense. Tab, tab. I move my mouse a little, tab. I move it out a little, tab, tab, tab. Right, I'm just hitting tab until I grab that edge of that floor, which is really hard in this view. Tab, 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 tab. Okay, so I'm not getting the floor very easily, so I'm going to just flip into 3D and click, there's my floor. Now if I X out of 3D, my floor is still selected, okay? Oh, I think I might have, and if it's not, right, so if I select it and then I X out, should be selected, it doesn't seem like it is, but if it's not, Revit has, if I right click, I can choose select previous and it will pick the item that I last selected. Okay. So I've got my floor and I need to alter the sketch again. I need to create an opening for the stairs to live in. So I hit edit boundary again. Right. I have my outer boundary intact. Okay. If I want to create an opening for the stairs are right here in this case, right? I would just create an opening. I'm going to do this two ways. We're just going to draw that for now, okay? So I've drawn an opening. And I can do that within the field of any roof, any floor, any ceiling, right? So I just create another boundary within a boundary, and when I hit finish, okay, if I look in 3D, which again, I pop into 3D after I create something, there's my opening for my floor, or for my stairs. Okay, I can bring walls up through that opening. Yep.
Can you do that again?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was really fast.
Yep. Let me undo that. Okay. All right, so I grab my floor, oop, which is a little difficult. Tab. See, even I have difficulty. It's just these boundary kind of based elements. Oh, click. There we go. Okay. Now I can, two things. I can exit out and hopefully it stays selected. If it doesn't, I can right click and choose select previous. Another way that I can edit the floor, I can X out of here. I can go into 3D, find my boundary. I can also hit edit in 3D. All right, edit. And it said, okay, so there's my editing tool, but it's not very useful in 3D to edit the floor because it's skewed view, right? So once I'm in my sketch, I can also go back to, top of wall and edit it from here. Okay, so I guess, I'm flipping back and forth between views pretty quickly, but my point with this is that, again, Revit is really, I guess, malleable, right? I can click edit floor and it pops up in 3D, and then I can close that view and go to a different view, right, and look at it. Anyway, you can just move around pretty easily in Revit. Okay. Now, if I wanted to create an opening in the floor for stairs, I essentially have this outer boundary intact. Okay, so I'm going to leave that alone. To create an opening, I can use any of my drawing tools. I'm going to use rectangle in this case. And I just draw a boundary around where I want that opening to go. Has to be a closed boundary, so a square or a circle or something to that effect, okay? But essentially, in my floor field, I'm just going to draw another boundary, and that boundary is an opening, okay? If I wanted to create another boundary elsewhere, like over here, maybe we have a round opening in the floor, right? I have one opening, two openings. I hit finish. Just going to do no for now. I'm going to shade this view, SD, and do you see how I have an opening there and an opening there?
It looks like I drew lines over lines.
Let's see.
I started doing it with just the line, not the boundary, so I have a line right there, so it would be
Delete that. Delete this one right there. Yeah. Delete that. So, yeah, now hit finish. If something is wrong with it, it won't let you do it. So say, hey, maybe you're overlapping line or it's not intersecting. So hit it. Now zoom in a little bit. Click on that one time. Okay, now I'm going to draw it. I don't know what's happening, but because you already have those three. So if you have another one, you could always just go really small and so select them all and just delete them. Sure. You got a lot of really now it's not sure. We'll talk about this. All right, so if you make a mistake in drawing your floor sketch, right, Revit will tell you, hey, you've made a mistake in your floor sketch, right? So I'll talk about that in a second, but let's just look here, right? Now we have these openings, right? And when we draw our stairs, which we'll get to in a few weeks, our stairs will, open, or will live in that area, essentially, okay? Now I'm going to go back into my top of wall here, okay? Now if I wanted to edit this again, you can edit these as many times as you want. The nice thing about having an opening there is that it's a boundary, so I very easily can pick my floor now, right? And I can hit edit. One thing, if these do not meet, right? So do you see how that is open and I hit finish? It says, hey, they must be in closed loops, okay? Well, I'm gonna trim that, TR, click, click. Or if I accidentally draw another, like two boundaries, one on top of the other, okay? And I hit finish, it says, hey, you cannot do that. You've got something weird happening. So you have to go back and delete, delete, and figure out kind of what is happening, right, before it will let you advance. So I click on draw again, click, click, looks good. You can really draw an opening with any type of boundary, right? So I could make a goofy looking opening, and as long as I don't violate any of the rules as far as overlapping lines or the region being closed, when I hit finish, okay, I have a weird opening. We'll do skylight, right? And there are my openings. Okay. I'm gonna hit undo really quick, Control Z, and I go back into sketch mode. I'm in sketch mode in 3D, right? Oh, I think you've drawn one floor on top of the other. Okay, okay, good. I go back into 3D. It's, I'm in sketch mode. If I go back to my floor plan, top of wall, click, click. Okay. I can delete this out. Delete, gone. Click, delete, gone. I could grab this and I could move it so it's larger or widen it, right? or delete all of these and regenerate all of the openings, right? If I had them in the wrong spot. Okay. I'm going to hit finish. Okay, so these errors that I'm just clicking no through, okay, it says, would you like to attach your walls to the bottom of your floor? And ideally, when you first start using Revit, when you know what it means, you're like, yeah, let's do that. And then when you start using it a little bit more, you're like, why did I do that? Why did I have my walls attached to it? You know, because it causes problems. But essentially what that means is that if I have like a floor slab like this, okay, and when we talk about roofs, this will be a little bit more, it'll make a little bit more sense. But essentially if this is like a floor slab, right, and I have my exterior walls going like this, and this applies to, you know, these exterior walls, you know, it also applies to interior walls, like if I have a bathroom wall or something that is in here, okay? You define your wall to go from this point up to this point, right? Now these walls, you know, depending on how your floor slab works, maybe they encroach a little bit into your floor slab, or maybe they miss it by a tiny bit because you haven't kind of adjusted it, right? When you get that error that says, would you like your walls to attach to your floor slab? Essentially what Revit is asking you to do is to establish a relationship between the top of your wall, right, and the bottom of your floor. So that regardless of whether or not the floor moves up or down just the tiniest bit, your walls will remain connected to it, okay? And it sounds like a really good idea. It sounds like a really good idea. And I mean, generally it is. But you do have some times where it causes errors if you don't want all of your walls moving up and down with your floor for whatever reason. But that's what that does. So if you say yes, attach my walls to the bottom of my floor, it doesn't like say permanently they never remove themselves, but essentially you've said, you know, you want your wall to go from here to here, but this might overwrite that, right? If the floor slab moves up or down a little bit, you know, this connection will remain, okay? So, I know it's good and bad. It's good and bad, anyway, but that's what that does. So if I were at this point in time after using Revit so long, if I were to give you advice on do you want them to attach, I would probably say no, right? But it's not the end of the world if you do attach them. All right, any questions on floors so far? Not bad, right? So places we're gonna add floors, right? Wherever there's a floor. So if I go to my section view here, we're gonna have a floor here between these two levels. We're gonna have a floor at the main level, right? The floor might sit up in the space, or, you know, depending on how the foundation is, it might generally it's gonna sit down into the space here. So your floor will kind of sink down in here until we get foundation walls going. We are going to add, there's two ways to do kind of the roof plane in Revit. We can add, we'll get to that when we get to roofs. But essentially, I guess what I'm trying to say is the roof here is not a floor, right? So I don't add floor, floor, floor. I have floor, floor, and then I'm gonna add a roof eventually, okay? We'll add the floor on the main level. Click, click. Okay, now I need to go up to floor. Okay, I'm gonna use my wall picker here. Click, click. However you want to draw these, you know, it's up to you. When your walls start becoming very defined and you're working professionally, you're really going to have to pay attention to where your walls intersect your floors, right? It's a big deal. But right now we're not super worried about it. I might make comments like, take your floor all the way out to the plywood, or, you know, do it this way, but it's not quite as big a deal today as it will be in the future. All right, so my level is main level for my floor.
Did you go all the way outside then, or did you do the center?
I did core. So when I use my wall pick, it says extend into the wall core. So it goes past the stud, essentially. Let me show you. Let me finish this sketch and I'll show you what that means, okay? So I just outlined this, I hit finish. I'm gonna change this from an existing, because I'm not getting my wall striation with existing, but do you see how, hold on, let's, 1 second. floor. Okay. Right, so do you see how when I said core, it goes to the edge of that, the wall structure, right? So if I were to edit my wall structure, right, core boundary, right? So it's a softwood lumber stud, right? It's a 2x6 essentially. And so my core is a 2x6, and so that floor is going to go all the way out to the edge of that 2x6, essentially, right? So that's why I was using that. Again, this becomes a pretty big deal. So right now it's not huge, but it will become a pretty big deal when you're working professionally. I'm just undoing. Okay. All right, so I've created my floor. If I look in a sectional view, right, my floor is poking down, which doesn't look quite right, but we'll have a foundation that comes up and meets it, and it will look wonderful when we're done, right? But there are my two floors, all right? I can create openings in any floor. One big thing, again, that will be a big deal when you start working professionally, when you have stairs, if they go from the basement all the way to the attic, right? Make sure that the openings in the floor line up where appropriate. So just making sure openings line up, making sure that your floors sit in your walls appropriately. Those are kind of the biggest deals, right, with regard to floors. Okay, one more thing about floors today. And of course, you'll want to add floors to your model. I haven't posted our official assignment yet, but I will. But you're going to be adding floors into your model, okay? Now, do you see how if I had defined a wall to go from my main level to like from here to there, right? And then I defined an upper level wall, there'd be a gigantic gap all the way around, right? Where the floor sits, and it would look kind of weird. Anyway, side note, right? Let's talk about creating shaft openings in floors. So when we generated these openings, right, I'm going to go to my level 2, top of wall. When I generated this opening, it actually cut a hole in my floor, right? So my floor really does not exist in this space right here, okay? And I did that again by selecting my floor, hitting edit boundary, and drawing these magenta lines where I want these floors to happen, right? So when I do this method, the floor is essentially non-existent here, okay? And this is pretty appropriate for most applications in Revit, right? There is another way of creating an opening in a floor though, and it's called a shaft opening, right? So a shaft opening is going to be essentially used for things like elevators where you kind of have multi-story, vertical circulation happening. Let me show you how to create them, and then we'll talk about their properties essentially, right? So under architecture, the architecture tab here, over here we have an option for shaft, okay? And it will create an opening that spans multiple levels, right? It will cut through all of the levels. But the difference between a shaft opening and actually drawing an opening in your floor is that a shaft just obscures the floor element. Like it cuts through the floor and it hides the floor that it cuts through, but the floor is not actually gone, it's still there, okay? So if I click on shaft, I get bumped into sketch mode, right? And I draw where I want my shaft to go. So if I have an elevator, right, this is just like drawing a floor. I click, this is where I want my shaft to be, right? You draw it dimensional. Now I'm going to define where I want that shaft to go. So the base constraint, let's make that the basement, and let's have it go all the way up to the roof, okay? When I'm done drawing the opening of my shaft, I hit finish. All right, so these two things, they look identical, right? And when I pop into 3D, they still look identical. Now, the difference between this opening and this opening is that I have two openings. You see that? And it's because I defined my shaft to go from the basement all the way up to the roof. So if I were to, let me go to my section that I have created. Click. If I were to copy this floor right here, CO copy, which you can do, by the way, CO, copy, right? I copied it a few times. You see how that shaft kind of generates an opening through all of those floors that I just copied, right? This is essentially like a void. It's just a big void, and whatever it touches disappears, okay? What's really nice about that is that if, you know, you've designed a project and you're trying to put an elevator in here, and they say, we want you to move that elevator 4 feet over. And you're like, okay, great. What's nice about a shaft is that it's an entity. I can grab it, right? It's a void, and I can move it. And you see how all of those openings move and line up perfectly, right? So essentially, it's really nice at coordinating openings, right? So the difference between this opening and this opening is that, well, I copied this, so they're right on top of one another, right? But essentially, if the owner said, hey, can you move the elevator 4 feet? And I had 50 stories, and I had manually cut openings in all 50 of those stories, I would have to change all 50 of those levels to match, right? Does that make sense what I'm saying? Okay. So the idea behind this is that I create a shaft opening, and, you know, if I have 50 floors and they say move the elevator 4 feet, I move the shaft opening, and it coordinates on every level without having to change the opening on every level, right? Kind of makes sense. So this shaft opening is going to be useful for kind of multi-story buildings, and I would say multi-story, anything over 3 or 4 stories, right? I would say likely that just using regular floor openings that you manually cut will be very useful in just 1 or 2 story buildings, right? The reason I say that is that although, you know, this kind of appears easy, this is an object, right? It's an object in your building. And if you move it on accident, it moves everything, right? So it's just another element to kind of get in the way. That's not.
Can you give it constraints?
You can give it constraints, yeah. Yes, you can.
So if you don't want to move off of one wall, you can always stay.
You can yes, you can. Yes. Yes. Constraints, again, are kind of a love-hate relationship with me and Revit, right? Like this whole constraint right here, like it seems like a great idea to constrain everything, but then when you over constrain, you end up with more problems because, anyway. Exactly, that's exactly it, right? So yes, I can constrain that shaft so that it doesn't move, but then if I want to move something next to it and it says, hey, that's constrained on this level, you're like, oh, well, I'm just going to unconstrain it because I need to move this other thing, obviously, right? So then you're kind of undoing the reasoning behind a constraint. I don't know. Anyway, you'll get a good sense for it, but I guess my point is it's just another object you have to deal with, whether it's constrained or not, right? So it makes sense. It perfectly coordinates things. So, you know, it's good in that aspect, but again, it's something to be dealt with, right? But those are going to be kind of the 2 ways you're going to deal with openings in your floor, right? The shaft or just cutting manual openings in your floor slabs, right? So I double click and I can see all those openings very nicely coordinated, right? Starting to look like a nice little building. I've got a wall there for whatever reason. Click, delete, right? Looks pretty good. Any questions about floors so far? Not bad. Yep.
I tried to attach a floor to the wall with 3 windows on the inside
Uh-huh.
of the building. It goes all the way to the edge.
Let's look. What's that? Oh, did you use core on that one?
Is there a button for stairs?
I think it's probably just how you picked it, honestly. So if you hit edit, boundary, you can move it to wherever you want it to be. Essentially. I would delete it. Oh, there you go. It looks like you did. Yep, it's just how you picked it. Yep. Oh, okay. I'll remind everybody. Just 1 second. Engineer, did you have a question? So in that case, you're going to leave those below, and you can put little, these 2 walls essentially will connect. Those 2 other walls are connected. Yeah, you got it right.
came from, I should say.
Okay, so Vaughn has lost her project browser again, right? Not again, but somebody again has, and it happens all the time. So if you lose your menus over here, okay, go to View, and you go to User Interface, and you're going to turn on Project Browser and Properties.
How do you get your those two things to sit perfectly right there?
They, so they are docked,
Yeah.
right? Now you're thinking, I'm trying to dock mine off to, I'm not going to move mine because if I undock them, it'll mess everything up. But the reason yours won't dock on your screen is because you have two screens. And so it's having a hard time sensing that boundary. This one took me a little while to figure out. So what you have to do essentially to get them to dock is you have to disconnect your second monitor. So go to your display settings and disconnect the second monitor, dock those two, and then bring your monitor back. That's what's happening.
Oh, forget that.
Oh, it's disconnect meaning like not like go underneath and unplug anything.
Oh,
Like just through here,
okay.
right? So here you would just do like your PC screen only. And then the other one would not be working and you could dock them and then bring it back. Yeah. Because otherwise it's a pain in the neck. Yeah. Okay, so we have our openings in our floor. We have our shafts here. Let me just make sure I didn't forget anything else. I think I got everything. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So I will post an assignment for your floor. Essentially, you're just going to be putting floors in here, right? So you'll be putting this floor in, you'll be putting this lower floor in, and I'm not even going to necessarily have you create an opening for the stairs just yet. You can if you want. It's fine. But we'll get to that a little bit more when we get to stairs and how all those function, right? So we'll worry about that then. Gosh, I think I had one more thing to say, but I can't quite. Well, anyway, that is stairs. There you go. And your roof and your ceilings and all those things, they're going to be they're going to function similarly to this floor. So just a little preview, right?
Do we have to create like a ceiling? You know how there's like a floor there, or does the ceiling you have to create a ceiling?
You have to create a ceiling. Yep. Well, again, there are a lot of like dual answers, right? So ideally, when you create your floor, you could say, well, I want the ceiling to be connected to the floor. So I'm going to define my floor slab to have drywall on the bottom side, right? But the problem with that is that when you host in your like your light fixtures, it doesn't recognize a floor, right? And so your lighting won't host to the underside of a floor, but it will host to a ceiling.
Okay.
So I'll go through that when we do ceilings, but yeah, one of those semantics. But that was all for today. I will get your assignment posted.
So if I set this now, set those